Frankly, today, I would not hire a software engineer that does not know how to use AI tools in a very sophisticated way. This hype that we'll get AGI, artificial general intelligence, in 2 quarters or a year or whatever, that's just hype. I seriously doubt that's going to happen. There's no technology that I know of today that by itself is a path to AGI. AGI has been defined and redefined so many times, it's almost lost meaning. When I started the Google Brain project, the #1 mission I set for the team was to say, let's do a really large neural networks and throw a lot of data at it. The way that AI learns is different than the way humans learn. Right. Actually, when starting a little bit before when I started Google Brain, when deep learning was coming up, I was reading stacks of papers on neuroscience to try to figure out how the human brain works to see if that could inspire better AI algorithms. And those exercises turned out mostly not to be useful. And so many nations are thinking about sovereign AI. One way to do that that's very efficient is investing in open source and open weight models. In the open source open weight model, one huge force over the last year has been the open source open weight models coming out of China.
But increasingly, United States appear to be less welcoming of immigrants, whether they are in technology or in any other field. How do you look at this?
I think it's awful. I think it's a huge unforced error on the part of the United States. I think the question is, now that AI is shaking everything up, can India upskill rapidly enough so that the very talented, very smart, very hardworking innovators and businesses in India can not just keep up, but potentially even leapfrog and invent the next thing.
Andrew, thanks so much for joining us today here in Davos.
Thank you. I just got to a plane a few hours ago and so that my first meeting here is with ET.
Wonderful. I'm going to start by asking you about what AI means for India and specifically for one of India's biggest industries, which is the IT services industry. A big concern has been that rapid advancements in AI has meant that a lot of software coding and a lot of software development, even mid-level software development, is today done by machines themselves. Tools like Claude Code is now being cited by software engineers as having been as getting really, really advanced. What does this mean? What could it mean for a very large services industry like India's AI industry?
I think the worries about cyclical disruption are well placed, and the risk and the opportunity is that with AI tools, individuals that are not skilled with AI are increasingly dramatically less productive than people that are. And so, frankly, today, I would not hire a software engineer that does not know how to use AI tools in a very sophisticated way. What is not well understood, but is spreading, is for many other job roles, from accountants to marketers, HR professionals to IT backend management. For more and more job roles, companies are demanding sophisticated use of AI skills, maybe even to the point of coding. So frankly, today, when I hire a marketer or HR professional, I would strongly prefer to hire someone that knows how to use AI to the level of being able to write software, build software to help be a better marketer, HR professional. So for India, with a very large professional services and outsourcing industry, the risk and the opportunity is if this group of people, very smart, hardworking people that the world has trusted for a long time to do important work, could upskill rapidly, then India will continue to provide tremendous value. But if the upskilling doesn't take place rapidly enough, then I think the job disruption, job displacement could be significant. So I feel a lot of pressure for India and a handful of other nations around the world to see how we can figure out the training to make sure we get this one right. Sorry.
I want to talk about the evolution of, the recent evolution of the LLM-based AI models and chatbots in general. I think the world woke up in a very big way during what we call the ChatGPT moment of 2022 to the possibilities of this generation of Gen AI tools. Since then, when you look at the evolution of these models and what they're capable of, have you been really impressed or have you been underwhelmed?
I think it's been great. Since the first version of ChatGPT, the models have continued to improve. And I feel like the hype has gone like that incredibly fast. The business reality has gone like that, also very fast, but not as fast as the hype, as things often are.
Yes.
more work lies ahead of us to build AI applications, to build AI agents and agentic workflows on top of this technology that I think is widely appreciated. This hype that we'll get AGI, artificial general intelligence, in 2 quarters or a year or whatever, that's just hype. I seriously doubt that's going to happen for any reasonable definition of AGI. But at the same time, without having computers that are as intelligent as humans, or as capable as humans in the general sense, there's so much work we do to help with business process automation, workflow reengineering. I think there'll be many big industrial or industry transformations coming in many different sectors. And we'll still be working on this like a decade from now.
You know, Jan LeCun, who's like you, another of the biggest names in the field of AI, he has recently said that he does not believe that the LLM-based, the current wave of models are not the right way to even try and approach AGI, and a totally different wave is required. Where do you stand on that debate?
So I think he's right. At the same time, the most reasonable definition of AGI that I know of is AI that could do any intellectual task that a human can. So if we have AGI, it means AI should be able to spend 5 years to write a PhD thesis or learn to drive a truck through a jungle in maybe a minutes, tens of minutes, because a human can. LLMs by themselves are not a path to AGI, but there's no technology that I know of today that by itself is a path to AGI. To achieve that type of AGI, we'll need new technical breakthroughs that none of us really know what exactly it is. So you can plug in any technology and say that technology that exists today by itself is not a path to AGI. That will be a true statement. But one interesting thing is because of the hype around AGI, I've seen a lot of businesses attempt to redefine AGI at a lower bar to make it easier to hit. And this is problematic because most of society thinks AGI means AI that is as smart as humans generally. People that can, to me, when with AGI, it means AI should be able to do everything that a remote worker would be able to do. We're very far away from that, to do everything a remote worker could do. And when companies redefine AGI to lower the bar and then say with some narrow, technical, finicky definition, maybe they take AGI, it misleads the public and misleads business leaders into thinking AI is on the more trajectory to be more powerful than it actually is. So I've seen this mislead high school students. They're now making different career decisions because they think AGI will obsolete certain careers. And I'm seeing CEOs make very large capital allocation decisions on the basis that AI will be more intelligent in a couple of years than I think it actually will be. So AGI has been defined and redefined so many times, it's almost lost meaning. But having said that, even without reaching this really high bar of AGI, AI is incredibly exciting and is incredibly valuable. And India and the US and other nations just building to that will be exciting.
I'm sure CEOs ask you all the time wherever they can get hold of you about, hey, Andrew, tell us what is happening, how should we, what's the most common question that you get from CEOs?
Actually, my business partner, Kirsty Tan, and I do a lot of work through AI Aspire, advising large businesses. And as we look to the industry transformation that's happening through many sectors, the biggest thing we end up speaking with CEOs about is how to help the businesses adopt AI. And I would say the number one thing is the people change. How do we upskill people, take them with us? How do we really do the people change management that helps the people that are ultimately going to do the work to adopt AI? And of that group, I would say the biggest category is a lot of businesses have done the let 1,000 flowers bloom strategy, and it's mostly not working. And there's a specific reason for that. Bottom-up innovation is important. Let's keep doing it. But I find that a lot of bottom-up innovation ends up with point solutions where someone sees, businesses do many things, and you take a small piece of it, make it 10 times more efficient. That's nice, but the overall gains to the business are incremental. So we see a lot of these 5%, 10% efficiency improvements, which are nice, but it's not what AI is promising to do. In contrast, it often needs top-down innovation or bottom-up innovation, but with a view of the bigger picture to understand what are all the steps the business executes to create value, to then re-engineer this broader workflow. I'm seeing that deliver much more value. So bottom innovation is great, but at some point it takes the individual, maybe a top-down leader or bottom-up person with that broader view, to think through the workflow redesign. And I'm seeing that where the business get it right, deliver much more value. Leadership comes from the top. There's a lot to be said for bottom-up influence. Let's do lots of that too. But leadership comes from the top. So one challenge I have to every CEO or C-suite person is if you're serious about AI, learn a bit about it yourself. Make sure that you personally, in addition to excitement about AI, learn enough, spend a few hours going a little bit deeper in the technology to make sure that you have that knowledge to drive your teams to allocate assets and prioritize and then drive the business results.
While I have you, I want to test my own understanding of how bots work and, about the current wave of Gen AI technologies. Fundamentally, the large language models work by predicting the next word or the next string of sentences, right? By, all the training they've had, they look at what's, how is it that models are able to sound so intelligent if all they're really doing is actually predicting the next word? Or is that an oversimplified understanding of what they do?
Oh, so in loosely, the way that large language models are trained, step one, called pre-training, is learn to predict the next word on the internet. And so after that, because the internet has a lot of random stuff, it tends to regurgitate internet-like things. But there's another step after that where we take the model and with just a small amount of data, align it to say more sensible things. So for example, they do its best to factually answer questions and give helpful answers, whereas sometimes the internet, social media doesn't give the most helpful answers. So they ask a question, you get back, a bunch of snarky, funny comments or something. But during the second step, which can be implemented using a technique called reinforcement learning or other techniques, you train the algorithm to be helpful, honest, and harmless. And so that second step. So the first step, pre-training, gives a lot of knowledge on the internet. And then that second step causes it to use all that pre-trained knowledge to supply to be helpful.
But with such fundamental steps, these models are able to sound so smart. It's able to give you strategies about complex problems and solve. It just seems a bit counterintuitive, but it just works. It just seems to work.
A lot of things in AI, a lot of history of AI has been when you build a big enough AI model, a big enough deep learning model, and throw enough data at it, it does a remarkably good job mimicking whatever it is in data. And so when you give it a bunch of data of helpful answers to questions, then the AI does a decent job mimicking what it has to sound like in order to give a helpful answer to a question or follow instructions in response to in a helpful way in response to a set of instructions that the user gives. I think this recipe, scaling AI models, actually we knew this kind of 15 years ago, I guess, more than 15 years ago. When I started the Google Brain project, the number one mission I set for the team was to say, let's do a really large neural networks and throw all the data at it. And now 15, 16 years later, this recipe which is very controversial when I started Google Brain. Actually, people say, Andrew, it's a bad career move. Don't do this. But I kind of had data that gave me confidence even back then this would work. But I think we're still not yet done squeezing the juice out of this particular lemon. I think there's still more work to be done to scale AI models.
Incredible. Yeah, but when you think of, has the boundaries of artificial intelligence truly advanced? You would think that, say, for instance, some of the long unsolved problems in mathematics, right? If a model comes up with a problem, if a model solves a mathematical problem that humans have not been able to solve for like 300 years, you would think that, okay, that is sufficiently helping push the envelope in terms of civilizational progress. Do you think we're going to see those kinds of advancements in pure science from these models?
I think we'll get there. I think it's not easy. AI has already been contributing, not doing it by itself, but contributing to advancing science. So in everything from biology, where AI is proposing protein molecules to test, or material science using some of the little things, and in computer science, we use AI to write code to help us run experiments. So
But a lot of that tends to be because of the brute force of computing that's able to do things more than what, say, humans previously able to do. But like the original thinking, that insight that might solve a really complex mathematical problem, are we going to see that kind of creativity or original thinking also coming from AI?
It will come, but I want to give an important caveat, which is you use the words original thinking and creativity, and these are very deep philosophical concepts. To me, what is creative is in the eye of the beholder, and there's actually no, as far as I know, there's no scientific definition of creativity. So whether a human is creative or whether AI is creative is an important philosophical question as opposed to an important scientific question, because they can't measure it or can't have a clear definition. So questions like this, and including questions of is AI conscious, because consciousness is not measurable, is a philosophical question, not a scientific question. But to me, if it behaves in a way that looks creative to me, I'm happy to say AI is creative. If it behaves in a way that generates thinking that seems original to me and a bunch of other humans, I'm happy to say AI is capable of original thinking. But I am here maybe stepping away from my typical role as a business leader and scientist and engineer and giving a philosophical rather than a scientific answer. So.
Incredible. If you, I sometimes wonder, is the reason that AI seems to work so well, is it because this is also how human mind works? Like children learn by watching adults and trying to mimic them. All the early sentences that kids say are, and is that foundationally how humans learn? And is that why AI works so well as well?
I wish I knew how the human brain works. The way that AI learns is different than the way humans learn. Today's cutting-edge AI models have absorbed way more text and images than any human will ever consume in a lifetime. And in key ways, they're still dumber than any human is. But maybe in key ways, they're also can do more than any human can. So the way it learns is very different than the way humans learn. There is vague inspiration from how humans learn that's affected how AI learns. But I remember actually when starting, a little bit before when I started Google Brain, when deep learning was coming up, I was reading stacks of papers on neuroscience to try to figure out how the human brain works to see if that could inspire better AI algorithms. And those exercises turned out mostly not to be useful, because it turns out that neuroscience today, as far as it's come, frankly, barely understands how the human brain works. And so trying to take inspiration from neuroscience to implement in the computer, has been only a little bit hopeful, but it's not the way that we're driving most of AI progress today. People often make the analogy to, we didn't build airplanes by mimicking birds. Birds flap wings, airplanes don't. But studying birds helped our understanding of aerodynamics, and those principles of aerodynamics has been completely important for figuring out how airplanes fly. So one grand question that I'm interested in, that a lot of people are interested in, but that we don't know the answer to is, what is the nature of intelligence? How does intelligence arise? How does it work? I wish I knew. Maybe if we ever developed that theory of intelligence, then just as a theory of aerospace has shaped how we build airplanes, if we have a better theory of intelligence, maybe that will shape how we build AI. But we just don't know right now.
Right. Absolutely. And Andrew, what have been the recent, let's say in the last 3 years? I mean, obviously today we are in an AI arms race where many of the top companies, including Anthropic or Claude or ChatGPT, I mean OpenAI, all of them are trying to Grok, all of them are trying to outdo each other. Every time a new model comes out, everyone is like, oh my God, this is the best model, only to be out excited 2 months later by yet another frontier model. Um, could you talk a little bit about which ones have been truly exciting to you? Which ones have felt to you like, whoa, this is quite something?
Oh, all of them. I think they're all incredibly exciting. The field is progressing quickly. I feel like, you mentioned Cloud Code did a tremendous job. I feel like to give the Gemini team credit, Gemini 3 with kind of a Gemini CLI has closed the gap significantly. And I think OpenAI Codex is doing a good job as well. Gemini 3 is an incredible model, so is Claude Opus 4.5. GPT 5.1, 5.2 are also very strong models. So I think there are many strong horses in the race, and this is great. But thinking to India specifically, I know that many nations rationally want to make sure that you don't want your critical AI infrastructure to be solely controlled by a foreign power or a foreign single company. And so many nations are thinking about sovereign AI, got to control your own fate for AI. I want to offer up one perspective for consideration. It's been great to see the rise of investments in AI in India, and in India making sure India's fate in AI isn't controlled by the decisions of some other entity outside India. That actually makes perfect sense. One way to do that that's very efficient is investing in open source and open weight models. Building these models is so expensive. What most nations need is to make sure that no one else can control your infra. But when there's open source, open weight infra, then you don't need to own it solely, but nations can come together to pool resources, invest in open source, open weight models, and that makes sure that someone else can't control one nation's fate. In the open source, open weight model, one huge force over the last year has been the open source, open weight models coming out of China. And China is, the US is ahead of China in the closed proprietary models, but China has released some of the best open source, open weight models. And this is becoming a tremendous source of geopolitical influence for China, because when someone incorporates a Chinese model into their work, then, when a user asks a question, and if it's answered by a Chinese model, it's more likely to reflect the views of the nation that it generated the model. So again, it doesn't mean India needs to, lock down its own India-centric models, but if it invests in open models, or maybe one other example, there are a lot of programming languages, say Python, that's what I use the most. Lots of people in India code in Python. You don't need to control Python. You just need to make sure that you don't have some other country whose interests may be counter to India's controlling the Python specification. So I think the strategic question of how to secure access to AI so then India can do the upskilling.
Well, Indian executives and engineers are also very critical to the development of the AI ecosystem in the United States, quite apart from top names like Sundar Pichai of Google or Satya of Microsoft. There is, across the spectrum, there are lots of important engineers, pioneers of Indian origin, and indeed of many nations, Chinese origin, all over the, but increasingly United States appear to be less welcoming of immigrants, whether they are in technology or in any other field. How do you look at this?
I think it's awful. I think it's a huge unforced error on the part of the United States. As an immigrant myself to the United States, I think a lot of the strength for the US is people that are native born, together with many of smart immigrants from India and other nations coming to the United States to work together, to invent, to create, to build for the US and for the whole world. The US has been so fortunate that so many smart people from all around the world have wanted, and hopefully to some degree still want, to go to the United States to work and create and invent and build. And the United States making things harder and less welcoming, both for high skill talent, as well as frankly for potential future high skill talent. And I'm thinking college students specifically, seems like a significant unforced error. And maybe on a more personal level, living in the US, I'm friends with many people from India and other nations whose personal lives are kind of thrown into turmoil or risk. I mean, when someone's lived in the US for 5 years, 10 years, kids, born there, raised there, grew up there, still waiting in line for a green card, but the regulations change. I mean, it's just awful. So on a personal level, I've been eager to do what I can to help, my friends or people I know that are immigrants going through these things. But I feel like the human aspect of it has been pretty awful. So I hope that someday, and I know that the U.S. does have to secure its borders, and securing the southern border has been an important the topic of discussion. But the overcorrection, vast overcorrection to being unfriendly to really smart, even 17-year-olds that want to come to the U.S. for college, then grow up and sometimes go home to India, sometimes stay in the U.S., but either way, build connections, invent, create. I think that's been really tragic.
One last question I want to ask you, Andrew. For a country like India, I mean, we're a growing economy. In the evolution of AI, again, you're watching an international arms race. It takes a lot of investments. US and China are clearly leading this arms race, and again, takes tremendous amounts of compute, tremendous amount of investments to get anywhere. Therefore, what ought to be the strategy?
The good news is that AI is so disruptive, a lot of the old rules of the game no longer hold. It's sort of that there are established businesses, some in US, some in China, they're very strong, kind of entrenched, but the earthquake from AI is shaking everything up. So this gives every nation a better chance than before to leapfrog and invent and do things that weren't possible before. I mean, we all saw India do this beautifully. Instead of putting in landlines, India went to smartphones, and that was beautiful. And so I think the question is, now that AI is shaking everything up, can India upskill rapidly enough so that the very talented, very smart, very hardworking innovators and businesses in India can not just keep up, but potentially even leapfrog and invent the next thing? India's pulled off the leapfrog game well on multiple occasions. I feel like quick commerce took off faster in India than most nations.
Absolutely.
I think actually in the United States, when you tell people you could get groceries delivered in 10, 15 minutes.
Sometimes 8 minutes.
I'm sorry. Yeah. All right. Yeah. See, I wish I could get groceries delivered in 8 minutes. So I think AI's changed the game again. So my question and then challenge to my friends in India is learn the skills, because the opportunities to build incredible things is there. Ignore the hype, learn the real skills, and then grasp the opportunities to build something bold and new.
Wonderful. On that cheerful note, Andrew, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. It's always great to speak with you.